If you're a podcast host, listen up. This one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle. And I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Must Love Books. Hello and welcome back to Must Love Books podcast. Today I am here celebrating the release day of Bound by Stars by E.L. Starling. Emily, how are you? Let's talk about this gender-bent Titanic in space.
I'm so good. Thanks for having me. All right. Bound by Stars. It's a Titanic in space YA sci-fi romance novel set in a future where the uber wealthy have abandoned Earth for an opulent habitat city on Mars. One of our main characters, Wesley, is from Earth and wins a ticket on the maiden voyage of the galaxy's most luxurious, fastest, and indestructible starliner, which, of course, what's going to go wrong there? We've never heard that before. Our other main character is Jupiter, a reluctant heir from Mars, headed home to a predetermined life he doesn't want. The two are forced together on the ship, which leads to a reluctant friendship, and eventually they start to fall in love. But days from their destination, everything starts to fall apart. The ship isn't going to make it, there aren't enough escape pods, and they'll have to band together with their friends to find a way to survive. It is the Titanic. I also love throwing out there that when James Cameron pitched the Titanic movie, he pitched it as Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. And so this is kind of like Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic in space.
Yes, definitely, which I love as a genre spin. First of all, just want to throw that one out there.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. And so I want to hear all about your inspirations for writing Bound by Stars.
My family does this super fun thing every year where we watch Interstellar and then get into a big fight afterwards because one of us gets really, really passionate about some sort of point that we don't quite understand in the movie and argues, but like we're kind of all agreeing with each other. It's kind of fun. And this has just become a tradition. But one year, my oldest actually brought up the fact that a certain billionaire was talking about terraforming Mars and how ridiculous that was because why not fix the planet that we can actually, exist on with oxygen and water and all of that good stuff instead of just leaving it for another planet. And so that kind of broke us into a discussion about if that happened, who would be able to go to Mars? What would society look like? And we kind of decided like, obviously it would be the people who could afford it would go to Mars and the rest of us would be left here. And society would probably be broken and the socioeconomic disparity would grow even farther. So we would have planets split by class. That idea was just like, oh my God, like how fun would that be to like write a novel in this? What would be the best way to approach it? And I love love stories. I'm obsessed with love stories. So of course that's what I wanted in this. And it just kind of hit me like Titanic in space, because what better way to put two characters together who are from completely different planets and completely different societies than smack dab in the middle of it on a ship.
Or they can't escape.
Yes, exactly. They can't float on a door. It's very high stakes.
So one thing that I really love about science fiction is how science fiction and science fiction fantasy both can be really relevant to contemporary issues that we see and experience every day. Like, for example, talking about billionaires terraforming Mars. So let's talk about that.
I mean, the big thing about this was the classism. Like that was a major theme that I wanted to hit. I mean, ultimately it's a love story. I always write my books for the love story, but the underlying theme, if I can slip it in there like in a great way, is this idea of classism and the problems with that and how it splits humanity. And I especially wanted to make this a YA novel because I mean, going as far as like classism, but like also just climate change as a problem. Like teenagers are dealing with a world that they're growing up in where these are like real issues. They're actually like afraid of climate change and like what that means for their future. So like having a book that has a love story that you can connect with and characters that you connect with, but then those underlying themes, it was just really important for me to like hit those really hard in a way that could like inspire hope.
I think that's something that we really see a lot of when we're working with a science fiction genre, whether it is a sci-fi romance or sci-fi dystopia or any genre in between, is the parallels between the fictional issues and our contemporary issues today. You know, as you said, climate change is a big issue. And I would say today more than ever, it's something that younger people, adolescents and teenagers, and even younger adults are more aware of and are more
Absolutely.
focused on. So I think, being able to relate to that in the fictional sense is something that not only will they appreciate as readers, but it's something that kind of helps them visualize how these issues can sort of, how they can kind of turn out, whether it's in a positive or a negative.
Right. I think it also gives like sort of a hope that like no matter how bad things get, they're strong. They can survive in some way, like it's not the actual end of the world.
I think exploring these issues through fiction really helps readers, especially younger readers in the YA genre, to really learn that perseverance that is needed in order for us to navigate these issues in our day-to-day real lives.
Absolutely. And like I think that that's why we put like teenagers into these dystopian stories a lot of the time because they're at an age where they have so much future in front of them and it's big and it's scary, but they can also have a lot of hope and they have like strong feelings, strong sense of justice. And so they're really like looking at the future of like, how can I make it better? How can I make it better for me? How can I make it better for my friends? And so dystopian stories in a way like sort of offer that hope.
And, growing up in my adolescent era, I was super into dystopian novels myself. And I only ever read like YA dystopia. I don't think I've ever actually read an adult dystopian novel featuring actual adult characters. Like even today, my go-to dystopia is The Hunger Games.
I
They're
mean,
still so relatable, even as you age in past the age that characters were. And because everything is just so, like, the future seems so infinite when you're an
exactly.
adolescent. And there's so many possibilities. And I think that's why we kind of love YA dystopia because it just seems bigger than when you're an
Absolutely.
adult.
Yeah. I mean, speaking to the idea of reading into like YA into adulthood, the thing is that you remember what it's like to be that age. You remember those feelings. And in a way, it's sort of it's like a time capsule of like the person that you used to be. And sometimes we like to visit that. But also, like you start to identify with more of the adult characters in the books, or see it a little bit of a different way. Like I think this idea that like YA needs to stick to teens is a little restrictive. Like I think that anybody who's looking for, a hopeful story is like a great YA reader.
Yeah, definitely. And I have to say, I love rereading YA dystopia as an adult, the same ones that I read as a teenager, and seeing how my perspective has changed as I have grown and changed, and what character decisions and arcs I still relate to, and what things I see now that I didn't see during my initial read.
Absolutely. It just gives you a completely different perspective on a story. And these stories are so well written. I mean, Suzanne Collins, like she can't miss. Like it's worth reading. It's great literature, really.
Literary genius for sure.
Exactly.
I'm actually working on Sunrise on the Reaping right now, and all the parallels between this novel versus The Hunger Games and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, as well as all of the parallels in our real world around us. It just blows my mind. Like, I am constantly, as I'm reading, I'm that one Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like pointing at the screen, like, ooh, ooh, like that's me constantly as I'm reading this novel.
Totally. I actually just picked it up myself and like I have been dodging spoilers like it's my job since it came out. So I'm like really excited to finally dive into it, but it's yeah, it's so poignant for today.
By the time this episode comes out, I'll actually have the first episodes of this. So I'll mention it briefly. So, me and one of my book club buddies from the podcast, Kaylee, also known as DNF, are reading it together and covering it on the podcast in each of the three parts of the novel. So, this episode is July 1st. I'll have parts one out available to listen on the podcast with part three, the final part, releasing on July 4th, which I thought was fitting as it is Reaping Day and Hamish's birthday.
Nice. Perfect. I'm in good company.
Yes, yes. And always, always a YA dystopia stan for life.
For sure.
So I want to ask you about your research for Bound by Stars and what historical facts did you uncover about the Titanic and how did that influence your writing?
Okay, so actually where my research started was terraforming Mars because I had to like build a society that made sense for this world. And the funny thing about the theories for terraforming Mars is that they are more sci-fi than anything I put in this book, or they sound more sci-fi than anything I put in this book. So, and they've made strides since I first did this research, but it's still like we would not be able to sustain human beings on Mars. That is not in the near future by any means. So I just abandoned that entirely and decided that I was going to make habitat cities. So everybody's still enclosed and protected, and I figured out the resources and we're good. But that's where my research started. And then, of course, I went into the Titanic. I wanted to find those like small facts that I could put into the novel so that anybody who was like super into the Titanic could spot it. Like, oh my gosh, it's the same amount of passengers. Actually, one of my editors did that and was really excited about it. Or like White Star Line is the company that runs the Boundless, which is the ship in the book. And that didn't change at all. That was the original company that put out the Titanic. And different tiny things like that. I have one really good one, but it's like too spoilery for me to like say out loud. I realized like I had it in my notes, like I'm going to tell people this. It's so exciting. It's so cool. But if I state it, I'm giving away a big part of the book. I can tell you when I come back for book two. How about that?
Yeah.
And then, of course, like the parallels to the movie was like a big thing for me because that's really what I was basing this on. Like, it's completely different because it's in space. These are different characters. They have more time to get to know each other. Like, Rose and Jack on the Titanic, if you actually watch that movie, they basically become best friends in a day. It happens so fast, but I have a little more time to play with in a book, and I can really develop the relationship between the main characters. I really wanted people to be able to have those, oh my gosh, that's the you jump, I jump moment, or that's the moment when Jack goes to the dinner and like is a fish out of water. Like, I really wanted those parallels, and they come across a lot differently when you're on a spaceship, but like it invokes that same feeling. You'll be able to identify them if you love this movie. If you've never seen it before, that's fine. It's a book of its own. But if you loved the movie, you'll be like, I see what she did there.
I love that so much. Also, I just want to giggle at the play on words, fish out of water.
Yeah, right.
Considering how Titanic ends.
Well, this book does not end like that because they cannot float on something and just survive in the void of space. So it's a little bit higher
No
stakes.
floating doors.
Nope, no floating doors. Technically, it wasn't a door. I've been told a million times, but it's just like so like ingrained in pop culture. You have to say door, right?
Even if it's wrong.
Oh,
we all
wrong.
know what it means when we say there was room on the door, even though it wasn't actually a door.
Absolutely. And yes, there was room on the door. It's been proven.
Well, I mean, Rose's strong suit was not math. She didn't even really try.
Right. I was gonna say, I mean, that's another like major difference between my female main characters because Wesley is like engineering prodigy. So like she's very good at math. So if two people can fit, she would have fit them.
We got to fix that one error from the movie. So is there anything that you can tell me about your writing process for Bound by Stars?
I actually came up with this idea around the time that I started querying another novel, which I ended up querying for about a year and a half and shelving entirely because I kept just getting back. I love it, but I can't sell a science fiction novel. So that didn't go so well. So I went out with another science fiction novel, but this one was like, it just was super fast. It flowed out of me like the greatest book. In 8 months, I had plotted, drafted, revised, sent it to my writing group, and like I was ready to go out on query submissions with it. I guess I would call myself a plotter, but I think that there's also this misconception that plotting can be too rigid. My outlines develop along with my writing too. I have this incredibly detailed outline that guides me through so that I don't get stuck, so that I have a guidepost for where I'm going all the time. But if a character leads me in a different direction, like I'm gonna follow that character. If I find something in the story that I'm like, oh, that would be cool, my outline's gonna change. So I spent, I would say, probably 5 months of that 8 months just working on the outline because I need that. Because if I hit a wall, generally I will just stop and feel like there is no point to moving on. And then I take a month break and I'm miserable about it. And nobody wants that.
I relate to that.
Right? Like there's nothing worse than hitting a plot hole and being like, well, crap, I don't know what to do from here. Where do I go? There's only so many times you can hit TK and send yourself back to a moment and not have something that goes through the rest of the novel that just completely messes up the plot. So yeah, I'm a huge planner, but I'm not inflexible. Anyway, I went through all the revisions and everything, and I think I quit writing entirely and was going to give up on this author thing like about 10 days after I started querying this novel, which was super fun. And then I picked myself up the next day and decided that I was being a big baby and took it out into the world.
A experience that you are not alone in, I can promise you.
I'm pretty sure every author at some point quit writing for a day, at least.
At least for a day. Like we've all been there. That moment when you're just feeling vulnerable and you're letting yourself down. And sometimes you just have to feel the feels and then maybe sulk for a day or two and then just get over it and get back to work.
My feeling the feels was kind of like a little bonkers, though. I think that my last straw had absolutely nothing to do with querying or writing at all. I was walking down the stairs to take a shipment because, like, I run a small business, so I ship stuff all the time. But I was carrying this box in front of me, and I was walking down the stairs, and I was being kind of mopey, and I tripped, and I fell down like 3 stairs face forward and just crushed the box underneath me and then just started to cry and simultaneously laugh at the same time like an insane person. And my husband was like, I don't know what to do. Like, first, are you physically okay? Second, do you just need a minute? What's happening? I don't understand. But yeah, we all have that breaking point, I guess.
I have to say the unhinged laughing cry it feels like you're losing everything and losing your mind, but really it is one of the most cathartic experiences out there. And sometimes that is just exactly what you need to pick yourself back up and put yourself back on track.
Absolutely. I definitely can recommend it. It was what I needed, I guess.
I mean, maybe not the falling down the stairs part. Like, try to avoid that one if you can.
Right.
But sometimes a good, I don't know if I'm crying, I don't know if I'm laughing, and I don't really know what I'm feeling because I'm kind of feeling everything all at once. Sometimes that is what exactly is needed.
Absolutely. The falling thing is totally because I embody a cliche YA character and I'm just clumsy beyond belief. I routinely forget that there are 2 more stairs at the end of the stairs and it just happens. So at least there was the box, I had a soft landing.
I've heard people say that the overly clumsy YA character is unrealistic, but she is me and I am her and we are one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, she exists and there's a reason why we write her.
Actually, the real reason why I relate to YA character so much
There
is
you go.
because we're all just constantly tripping over nothing and running into walls, okay?
Yeah,
It's just who we
absolutely.
are.
Sometimes you like the wall just moves 6 inches. It's not your fault, you know?
Maybe some people think it's unrealistic that clumsy is the number one character trait, and that's just the whole personality right there is clumsy. But that is my personality.
Right. It's like about the fifth time that you've dropped your phone during the day when like nothing is like in your way. There's no reason. You just forget how to hold something. Oh my God, why am I like this? We
No,
do exist.
the best one is when you drop your phone, then you pick it up only to drop it again
Right.
halfway through picking it up because you still can't remember how to hold basic objects.
Right. Or the try to catch and slap it away further so that you inflict
Yes.
more damage.
One time I did the catch and slap thing and I slapped it right into a wall.
Oh
And that
no.
was just, I just stood there and just stared at it for like probably a solid minute before I was able to restart my brain. Move
Sometimes you
on.
just have to stand back and take in the extent of your clumsiness and just appreciate it. You're excelling at something, really.
Yes, yes, that's a really good way of putting it. This is what I excel at is clumsiness and running into obstacles. So, speaking of obstacles, this brings us to our next point is how your experiences with obstacle course racing has impacted you in your writing for action sequences.
Well, it's impacted me in good and bad ways. On the one hand, I have some knowledge of different ways to use my body and the extent to which we can push obstacles and still make them realistic. But on the other hand, I create obstacles that are too difficult to write out, and then my editor and I go back and forth for a ridiculous amount of time trying to make it clear to the reader. I've been doing obstacle course racing for a good part of my adulthood. My sister and I run together because we run slow, but we love tackling the obstacles. I know firsthand what it takes to climb over an 8 foot wall when you're 5'4" and not super strong. What it takes to like really push through a fear. I'm insanely claustrophobic, and there is an obstacle in the Spartan race where you have to dunk under a wall, and the wall is maybe 8 inches wide, but you have to dunk under in a pool of water and come up the other side. And just something in me believes that if I dunk under that water and try to get to the other side, I'm going to die. Absolutely death. Immediately death. And so I stand in that water, hyperventilate, and it's made me have to push through. And so I can go into a character's brain now and know what it takes to push through like your biggest fear.
I think that's something that brings a really unique perspective to writing action sequences is actually being in those action sequences.
Right?
That
Voluntarily
adds
putting yourself in those horrible action sequences.
right? You know, I've heard of some romance authors doing something similar in a different way, but for terrifying stunts and action when you're fleeing something or crawling through mud, yes, there you go.
Right.
It adds a whole new layer of authenticity to the writing.
That's true. That's true.
Like, you don't have to sit and imagine what it would be like to have to dunk your head underwater to crawl through an 8 inch gap. You know what it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah, I can still feel it like in my body just thinking about it.
And now your characters do too.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I made Wesley claustrophobic for a reason. How much fun is it to put a claustrophobic character in like traveling in space? Because small
Because where are
spaces
you
are
gonna
going to
go?
be inevitable. But also, I know what she's feeling.
Now, I wouldn't suggest, you know, every author to attempt to do the stunts that they put their characters through, but it does take on a new form of research for that.
Right. I mean, we all have our things that make us better writers because we experience them. If I had to write a musician, I would be lost. I don't know how to play music. But there's research, There's talking to people, and it's kind of the same way with this. I'm great with the action because I've done these things, but also there are other things that I would be weaker at that other people are way stronger at.
So, if you want to experience what it's like climbing through tiny spaces while claustrophobic, as a reader, you don't have to go put yourself in a challenge, you can just pick up a copy of Bound by Stars by E.L. Starling.
There you go. Right? If you want to know what it's like to be terrified of going in a very tiny space, pick up Bound by Stars.
E.L. Starling once put her face through water to climb under a 8-inch gap, and now you can read about it instead of trying it yourself. Marketing genius right here.
Yeah. Why don't we just put that on the book?
Yeah, we don't need to hear about the Titanic retelling or
Right.
Romeo and Juliet in space. We don't need the super cool terraforming Mars background. Nope.
No.
Let's just hear about all the weird things that you have put your own body through that have made you a better writer.
Oh man. Yeah, I actually wrote it's sort of based on having to like jump hurdles and make it over like a gap where there's like a pretty big drop underneath, which is something that I actually did in a crazy obstacle course at some point in time. But my editor really had trouble visualizing what I was trying to explain. So I have several copies of that one scene because I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to tell somebody exactly what I'm doing and make it real. And so I think that it's in my Google Drive, that damn stair scene.
My goodness. I love that. You know, anything to make it more realistic, right?
Right.
So I want to thank you again so much for joining me today, Emily, and congratulations on your release for Bound by Stars. It's available everywhere, so go ahead and look it up, listeners. I think you're going to really enjoy this one.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been Must Love Books. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon under @MustLoveBooksPodcast. Thank you and happy reading.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.